All right, Casey, we are back tonight because there is some breaking news today. It sounds like Audi wants to build a off-road SUV, and they want Scout to do it for them. And we're big fans of Scout, and you're big fans of Audi. I am really looking forward to hearing your thoughts, but being built in the U.S. What do you think about this?
Built in the US, hopefully to avoid some tariffs, being built, on a body on frame platform. I mean, the speculation is it's going to be basically just a Scout built right alongside it in the same factory, body on frame, the same platform, right? So, yeah, I mean, it's compelling. It's years out, right? I mean, the Scout itself is, the factory's not even built, but I think it's interesting the way you framed it, right? There's now a lot of competition in this space, right? It's become very popular. Land Rovers, high-end BMWs, not as off-roady, but you know what I mean? Like GX 550s are very expensive now. Like there's a market for this sort of adventure-focused luxury vehicle. And so I guess we're seeing Audi saying, I want to get in that game.
Yeah, I think you just brought up a really interesting point. So, at least here in Texas, if you see an Audi dealer, most likely a Land Rover dealer is either right next door or right around the corner. BMW and Mercedes are always going head to head, but Audi and Land Rover, at least, like I said, where we live, pretty close together. And it's very clear in the speculation that's come out of Germany and now showing up in places like Car and Driver that Audi wants to do this. They want to take over the Land Rover Defender. And I'm also glad you mentioned the GX 550 because they're all going to play in that same space. The GX 550 went right after the Defender, right? And Audi has a very long history of all-wheel drive excellence, but they've never had anything that plays in this space, do they? I mean, you've owned several Audis. You're a big fan, and this has been a gap in the lineup, right?
Yeah, for sure. And it's interesting that they want to get involved in this way. I guess, like you said, they've got a great all-wheel drive system. If you think to like, let's say a Porsche Cayenne, right, which Audi has built vehicles on that platform. Those are actually very off-road capable vehicles, especially that first gen Cayenne, and then the Q7 came out, like actually kind of overbuilt for the market that was actually buying them. But they've never really gone after it that hard. And I think at this point in the game, trying to sell like a gussied up Q7 with all-terrains or something like that, I don't think that's going to do you any good. It's not
No,
going
it
to help you
doesn't.
break into the market, right? So I think it's interesting that they've gone this way. I think if they're going to try and grab some of that market share, an all-electric, solid rear e-beam axle, body on frame SUV, that's a differentiator in the high-end luxury game.
Yeah, it really is. And, you think about Defender and the success it's been for Land Rover. It's a gateway SUV for them in a lot of ways. It's brought more people into the brand, and those people are probably going to go buy higher end models later on. And I can see that Audi would want the same type of vehicle, right? That people, a younger buyer might want that's a little more adventure minded. And then later on, maybe they're going to buy another Audi for their spouse, or when they got kids and they've got a 3-row or need a 3-row, like they're going to go buy the Q8 or whatever replaces that vehicle later on. So I think it's not that surprising that they want to do it. And like you said, within the VW brand, you had Cayenne, you had Touareg, which, hey, you think VW probably doesn't want back in that game a little bit too? Could we see a Touareg make a comeback and be a lower price point and a different buyer leveraging that manufacturing capacity in South Carolina? Let's pivot there a little bit. Are you surprised at all that they would want access to that factory, that they would want to have this built in the US and built by essentially Scout?
I mean, so I made the tariff argument before, so there's that piece of it. But there's also, Volkswagen Audi Group has made a significant investment in Scout. And so, this to me seems like a way to get faster return on that investment and, get more for them out of this partnership. So no, I'm not surprised to see that at all.
Yeah,
I was a little surprised that it's Audi first.
I don't know that I am, but I understand your point. The CEO of Scout was in Germany with the Scout vehicles on the stage in Munich. And, we thought that was a little odd because he spent a ton of time talking about how this product is for the American market, this product, and this is why, and this is what they're looking for, and this is how it delivers to a European and primarily German audience. And then in subsequent interviews being asked about, potentially leveraging that capacity, he said, well, look, we can build 200,000 vehicles a year. There's more investments coming in that facility. And so he's been very coy, but hinting that all along they would likely expand beyond just the Scout brand for that facility. They are going to do everything they can to leverage, the joint venture between Rivian and Volkswagen on the new EV architecture across the product lineup for Volkswagen. They just celebrated 1 year this week of that joint venture and seem really excited about it. Let's talk a little bit about the customer. Who's buying the Audi SUV that's not buying the Scout, right? Because it's just two different segments in the market.
Yeah, I guess it is. I'm probably thinking too closely about like my own use case, but yeah, I think in general you're right. And so I think it's, you mentioned the Q8. I think it's people who like Audi, and there's a lot of them, but who are, they kind of look across the street, as you mentioned, at the Land Rover, and they're like, whether they are going to go do some adventure travel or not. Maybe they just kind of like the idea of maybe they can one day, and just kind of the image of being able to do that. And you can't do that with any of the Audi products right now. And so I think that's really the market, right? Somebody trying to move into that. Um, Wants to add another Audi to their garage, but can't because it doesn't quite fit, check that box, right?
Yeah, it wasn't that long ago. We were still in the COVID era where supply chain was crazy and people couldn't get cars. But I remember walking into the local Audi dealer and they had a used G Wagon sitting on their floor, very prominent. And it was way marked up because you couldn't get cars at that time. But it just kind of struck me that, that was what they were showcasing. That was the type of buyer they were trying to pull into the dealership. And Audi's fundamentally like their brand position and what they try to achieve from a design standpoint, a technology standpoint, is really different than what we're seeing with Scout. Scout is, like we said, it's that Americana. It is that go anywhere, all terrains, mud terrains, 35s. Um, you've got the tire on the back. You're gonna have accessories and bull bars and winches and a retractable roof, all of that cool stuff. That's not what I expect this product to look like at all if it does come to fruition. I think it, again, EREV platform, clean sheet metal, probably a much more cold, technical design on the inside. It'd be nice. Audis are incredible on the inside,
Yeah.
but it's that black and soft satin chrome type finish and nice screens and hexagonal shapes. And it's very, I don't know what you would call it, but we appreciate the warmth of
German.
Scout.
That's what I would
German.
call it.
All right. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, and
Upscale dance club
exactly. I
on
think,
sprockets.
let's let's remember the Audi all-road buyer, right? Like they're still selling all roads, which is more or less like a German version of just like a Subaru Outback, right? And they're marketing, they've got it with, kayaks on top and that sort of thing. And so, the buyer that likes that, but it's not, they want to take it up a notch, or maybe they've got a little bit more scratch and they can afford something a little bigger, nicer, whatever. That's who's going to go after this.
Yeah. And I'm throwing up some images on the screen of some recent concepts in the last 2 to 3 years, some going all the way back to 2022, I believe, that Audi has dropped. These are some Q6 concepts with a more uprated, outfitted off-road variant. And then I think there's even a few more here, where they take it another step further with some, off-road lights and even more of a lift, things like that. But again, their existing platforms just aren't going to be able to pull this off. They needed to go in a different direction if they wanted true off-road capability, right? And so this certainly fits that. So I actually have a question for you, because you brought this up in a text. Could this be a dealership play as well in North America? And we know Scout is sticking to the no dealer model. They want to sell direct. And the VW family of dealers is very upset about that and is trying to push for access to the product. Is this kind of a way to get the dealers off their back a little bit?
Yeah, I think possibly, right? Okay, so it's gonna be built on the same platform in the same factory as the Scout. I'm gonna, it's not too big of a leap to say, well, then you're probably, Audi's gonna have to service that vehicle, and that means they're probably gonna be able to service the Scout as well. So, when people have asked us about, dealership service and everything, I think it's a strong indicator. I mean, there's been rumblings of that with like VW being able to get it serviced at a VW dealership. And I wonder if that relationship's not going all that great because of the pushback they've got from the dealers in America and everything. It makes me wonder if it's a little bit of leverage on those guys to say, well, maybe you just won't get to service the vehicle either. If you're going to throw a fit about it, we'll just let the
Yeah.
Audi dealer service it, because I know that it's the same parent company making the vehicles, but that's not really the case among the dealers, right? It's a
Yeah,
different thing.
you're right. And I guess that's where the VW Touareg type product might come into play later, that maybe, yeah, that's an interesting point, because at least around here, I don't think the dealership owner groups typically have VW and Audi in the family. I don't really recall seeing that. That's not how it works.
Not
So,
often.
yeah. But this could be, just like you said, more of a negotiating tactic of, hey, we're willing to, they're floating this out there, they let the speculation out, and it drives the conversation, in a different direction for them. So, yeah, very, very interesting. Um, if anything, that if there's anything that concerns me, because the article that did come out in Car and Driver said, was worded a little funny, but it hinted that the Audi would also go into production in 2027, which seems a little far fetched to me. And so when I say concern, are they diverting any resources away from establishing the Scout product first? And I think that's probably more accurate, right? I think they will very much focus on Scout, and Audi would come later. But because I don't know, we're still dealing with some speculation and not all the
Yeah.
facts.
Yeah, that would be concerning to me. My suspicion is that the people writing that article, like they're mentioning the Scout timeline without really realizing that they're not exactly the same. That makes
Yeah,
sense. Like
that's
they're just kind of conflating two,
yeah,
which happens a lot when you're writing a very speculative article. Like you said, everything we've heard is late 2027 for the Scouts to start production. So that means if you're also going to have the Audi in 2027, there's going to be a ton of overlap there, and that wouldn't surprise me. I guess the only thing that, if you do want to worry about that, we kind of made this point with the Ram Charger platform and the Grand Wagoneer, is that, well, an Audi version of this is going to command more money in the market, and so are you going to maybe push that out sooner in hopes of just recouping some expenses earlier on in the process? I don't know,
yeah,
but
certainly a
my
possibility.
suspicion is that it would be pushed to 2028
Yeah, yeah, I think
or
so.
later, to be honest. I mean,
So I'm sure there's going to be some people that are going to see this news or read that article or listen to this podcast, and they'll go, oh, great. They're just it's going to be the same vehicle. And I don't think people should think of it that way. I really don't. There's obviously some changes. You've got the basic EREV architecture. You've got this joint venture that's producing the zonal electric architecture. You've got a software stack, right? And then the brands take those components and they start to build upon them, right? So it'll have its own interface, GUI, different types of approach to the in cabin experience. Interiors all different, the sheet metal's all different. Like, I just can't imagine Audi getting a vehicle that does the same things that a Scout is going to do. I can't imagine. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe they look at the GX 550 and go, we actually need that. And if it's a Defender competitor, then, we need some of that, right?
Yeah, but even if they do, let's think about that for a second. Like, get in the new Land Cruiser and get in a GX 550, or even a GX 550, whatever they called, like the kind of standard version versus an Overtrail. Very different vehicles, but more to like the Land Cruiser versus GX 550. Those vehicles are substantially different in just how they feel like every day, right? And so I don't know. I would expect it to be very similar dimensionally, ground clearance wise. It's gonna, other than that, probably the initial ones are going to be far less aggressive in terms of off road. And you mentioned like the interior philosophies are just vastly different. They're not going to be anywhere close to each other in that respect. But yeah, I don't know. We've seen this before. Like, how much was a Touareg like an Audi Q7? Not very much.
No, that's actually a really good point. And compared to the Porsche product as well, totally
Yeah,
different
exactly.
dimensions, totally different dynamics, design philosophy, etc. Um, I wonder if Porsche ever wants to come back into the space. I don't think they do. I think the overbuilt SUV, that ship has sailed for them, right? They're just leaning so heavily into sport and electrification in the sport space. I don't think they would come back into this.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, one way or another, it's really exciting news because I think it just represents a commitment more than anything. That facility continues to make a ton of progress. Scout's starting to make more and more noise. They're trying to get more vocal. They're out at the LA Auto Show this week. I was going to see if I could pull up this cool photo. I was showing it to the missus the other day of a new accessory that they had. It's called the backpack. Yeah. So I sent that out, and it replaces the spare tire on the Traveler SUV. And I should have had it ready to go, and I don't. Gosh, guys, bear with me. There it is. So let's pull this photo down, and then we'll show it to the folks at home. Really cool idea, because on the SUV, right, you've got this spare tire carrier, which is really cool and well engineered, and you've got this, spare tire hung on there that you really don't need most of the time. There it is, up on the screen. So it's this pretty big compartment, and they said, and one of the guys said in the commentary on a YouTube short, that it has like this slide out drawer integrated into it as well. It's so like there's easy access to it. So I can't wait to see what this is all about. But I can imagine, you know, if you're going off on a road trip and you're going to be in the mountains and you do trails, you've got your spare tire on here.
Mm-hmm.
But maybe you want to pull that thing off on a daily basis and you're
Yeah,
running around doing kid stuff and grocery, you could use that.
absolutely. I thought of that immediately because I'm like, okay, Brian, like, how many times have you ever actually needed to change a tire on the side of the road?
Yeah.
And let's
And by
be
the way, you really
honest,
shouldn't anymore
right?
if you can
Yeah,
avoid it.
well, too many people on their cell phones.
Yeah.
Thanks, GM. Stay tuned for that video. But, like, yeah, how often do you really need to do that? Great to have the full-size all-terrain spare back there, but no, I saw this video, I was like, that's so great for just your weekend trips to the soccer fields or whatever. I immediately thought, can that be a cooler? And but it doesn't really matter. I mean, saving space however you can, use it for whatever you want. But I can just envision a whole line of accessories that interchange with that tire carrier in the same way. And that would be, yeah, it's probably not quite deep enough for a cooler, right?
Yeah, maybe not. But
Yeah, but
I tell you what you
still
could throw in
super
there.
cool.
You could throw some dirty, stinky, crappy gear from a sporting event in there, and it's not in your
Hmm.
car, and it's not, stinking up something that's even like your frunk, which may have some other things in
Mm.
there, like some groceries or something.
I
So
just had to put my 6-year-old in there after a
that's so
soccer
true.
game.
That kid
Yeah,
sweats, man.
dude, sweat monster.
Yeah. So anyway, I think this is what this points out to me more than anything is that the Scout team's going to get very creative from an accessory standpoint. And I think this is just hinting at a whole lot more to come. So thought that was fun. But we know they're building a big facility to dump on the accessories. And yeah, you talked earlier about how much an Audi would cost versus a Scout. You start adding a whole lot of really cool accessories to your Scout, it's going to jump up pretty fast.
Mm-hmm.
Speaking
That
of, so
7% for 84 months.
yeah, yeah. So we're not going to do a separate episode on this. At least that wasn't our plan. But the Jeep Recon dropped today, and which is the all EV from Jeep that we've been waiting on forever. Certainly looks like a cool BEV vehicle with a lot of cool capability. Doors off, roof opens up, rear glass, lid glass comes off. Jeep stuff, right? But only 230 miles of range and $65,000. And that just doesn't do it, man. We talked the other day.
Especially for a vehicle that's supposed to have all these off-road chops, right?
Yeah, and it's I would definitely call it a soft rotor setup, right? I mean, it's got a good approach and
Yeah.
departure angle, and it's got independent front suspension, but it's not going to have a solid rear axle. It's got an e-locker. Okay, so yeah, it's going to do some things, but I don't know, a properly outfitted Bronco Sport does some things, and it kind of, I'm probably selling it short. That's probably not fair.
I think that's going to do a lot more than a Bronco Sport.
Okay.
I mean, I was looking at that thing. Look, I mean, I was at the top of Yankee Boy Basin like 2 months ago, right? That vehicle is going to get a long way up that trail. Like, you know, assuming it's got air suspension with enough clearance, it's going to make it up there. It's got the rear locker, big beefy all-terrains, like it'll do it. And so that's not soft roading. You know, that's.
But it's probably not.
Nobody's driven it yet.
I don't know. Yeah. Yeah.
Well,
no, you're right. Like I said,
no,
I'm probably
but that's
not
okay. I mean,
I'm not giving it enough credit.
Yeah.
But the thing looks like it's going to top out at 32.4-inch tires. Okay. You're not putting anything bigger than that on it. I don't think it's going to take anything bigger than that. They're saying 33s, but I think they're rounding up. And that looks like that's the max tire you're going to be able to get on that platform.
Like I said, that's what I'm rolling on my car. So, you know, yeah,
okay.
I think the range.
Well, I'm not sitting here accusing you of soft roading, but that's not what I'm doing. But you know,
okay,
yeah, you're not.
I'm just saying,
not crawling rocks.
Whatever you say. 33s are what's on your Jeep, or were on your Jeep, right? That's supposed to be able to do the Rubicon Trail. Yeah, I just think, you know, the bigger issue is it's 230 miles of range. Like there's, I don't know. That just seems pretty silly without some sort of range extender or whatever. And, you know, I don't know. I love that the doors come off and all the windows come off and all that cool stuff. Before we were doing this, I had YouTube up and I was like, you know, told my wife, you got to see this, the Recon, it's real. It's not vaporware. It's out. You know, I was playing Andre's video with TFL and thinking she'd be interested in this vehicle, and not at all interested.
Yeah, I think that's
maybe it's because she's seen a Scout in person and she's like, stop trying to show me other cars.
And she doesn't realize it's an Audi. What you do, right? Yeah. Yeah. Here you go, man. Here's a shot of this thing, probably out in Moab somewhere, showing off a little bit of its articulation. And yeah, like it's going to have some capability. You're going to have a spare as well, but showing off the ability to pull all the glass out and take the doors off. I don't know where you're going to put them, but that's a problem with Jeeps anyway, right? Being able to store those things somewhere safe and all that glass. That's your problem. You got to solve for that. So we got a couple of photos here. There's your up close of the tire and wheel package. What's the tire that's on there? I don't know if I can zoom in and see it. The actual brand or the model of the tire. It's like the Nixian Outpost AT, I think, which is supposed to be a really good tire for EVs. Like EVs. Good traction, but also still quiet, which you want in an EV. You don't want that highway noise to overwhelm you. Although people that are going to buy this product aren't going to care nearly as much about that because they can pull doors off and everything else and top open. Right. So, you know, what's a little tire noise to them? But this still does feel like a lifestyle vehicle. I just can't get over the price. And I guess that's just the reality of the situation. 65K for the Moab edition at least. Maybe a little bit less for some entry level trims. I guess we'll find out. But, with Scout sitting there saying they're going to hold to their $60,000 entry price, and I guess we'll be able to compare apples to apples someday soon. But it certainly seems more compelling. Well, look, we don't need to drone on and on about this. We just thought we would jump in and discuss, again, reports out of Germany being repeated now by some US publications. And so we couldn't ignore it. And the more options, the better, right? And the more utilization of factory capacity and all the technology, the better. That should make everybody feel better about the future of Scout, that it actually coming to fruition. So any final thoughts on that, Casey, before we cut this one off?
No, I think that's right. I think I've seen a surprising amount of comments lately, about the Scout just being like, well, I mean, if it ever actually shows up, like it might be vaporware or something. And I'm just like, no, guys, like there's just way too much on the line here. And now you see, this just shows what kind of commitment there is behind the factory and all of that. So calm down. It's not vaporware. It's a real vehicle. It's awesome. And we can't wait to see it.
That's a perfect way to wrap it up. So to your awkward wave, and let's get the heck out of here. ROMR out.
All right.